This conference will now be.
Right, let's start today's session. See, in the last session, we were discuss about object-oriented programming. I just explained what is class, what is object, and we know how to create a class syntax and how to create object to the class. And we explained in the last session one class program. Here it is a class, and this is the name of the constructor in Python. Always underscore underscore in it only. And this is the method, and this is the object creation. This is object name equals to class name. E is object name. Object only we are calling the method display underscore emp underscore details. Okay. This is the basic structure of program, object oriented programming. But here today I am going to give clarity what is constructor and what is method, what is the difference between constructor and method. We'll discuss in detail. Okay. Yes. First we'll talk about constructor because constructor is there. Now, so constructor. What is constructor? Point number one. Constructor is a special method of class. Constructor is a special method of class. Same like normal method, how we have this is our own method. This is a special method. Okay, constructor is what actually it's a special method of class. Next, constructor is to initialize the values. Constructor is used to initialize the values to the variables. General purpose of constructor is used to what? Initialize the values to the variables. Initialize means assigning the values to the variables generally. Constructor is used to initialize the values to the variables. And number three, constructor name is always underscore underscore init underscore underscore of self. Constructor name is always what? Underscore underscore init. Underscore underscore to underscore init means initialization. Underscore underscore of self only. Constructor name is always underscore underscore init underscore underscore of self only. This is constructor name. But look at this according to other languages. Okay. Constructor name should be same as class name. Even in Java or C Sharp.NET, generally programmer says that constructor name should be same as class name. But in Python, constructor name always we should keep it only. Init means initialization part. What is this? It is the initialization part. So, but look at this. Even in our program also, generally we can say this is object name equals to class name. But actually, originally this is a constructor name only. Employee is a constructor name. This is same as class name only. But in Python, what will happen? The moment when we represent this class, automatically who will initialize? Init method will initialize. Initialization method will initialize. That means that's what we are calling it as constructor name is in Python what? Init only. Initialization. Got my point? According to C Sharp.NET or Java, other languages, even C Sharp.NET and Java also powerful programming languages, that is object-oriented programming languages. According to them, constructor name should be same as class name only. Here also you can see in Python, so object name equals to class name we are saying, but originally this is not a class name, it's a constructor name. But this constructor will be override with what? Init. Init means initialization. So that's what we are calling constructor is what in Python? Init only. Init, initialization. Okay, initialization takes place. So constructor is a special method of class. Constructor is used to initialize the values to the variables. Constructor name is always underscore underscore init underscore underscore of self. Okay. Yes, self is the first parameter. Self is the first parameter. Self is a special variable, we can say. First of all, let me talk about self. What is self? Self is a special variable in Python. In Python, object-oriented programming. Self is a special variable in Python object-oriented programming. Next, self is the first parameter. Self is the first parameter of the constructor. Self is the first parameter of the constructor. That is, sir, self is the first parameter. Apart from self first parameter, other parameters you can take your own, no problem at all. Self is the first parameter of the constructor. Generally, what is the use of self means? Self is used to access current class members. Self is used to access current class members. Current class members means what? Currently in your class, what members are there? Like members means variables and methods. That current class members we can access using self. Self is used to access current class members. Okay. Self will work only within the class, not outside the class. Very important about self. Self can be used only within the class, not outside the class. Once outside of the class cannot be used self, not outside of the class. In the class only we can use self. So this self is a part of constructor and self is a part of method also. That's what self is important, sir. Self constructor name is always underscore underscore int underscore underscore self. Self is a special variable in Python object oriented programming. Self is the first parameter of the constructor. Self is used to access current class members. Current class members means like self.ead, self.ename. We are accessing or not. So look at this, self is working within the class or not. Within the class means this is within the class. Outside the class means this is outside the class, this area. Once we create object after, then outside the class only this is. Okay. Now, sir, when constructor will execute, and constructor will execute automatically. Constructor will execute automatically when we create object to class. As soon as when we create object to the class, who will execute, sir? Constructor will execute. Constructor will execute automatically when we create to the class. Constructor will execute automatically when we create object to the class. The moment when we create object to the class, immediately constructor will execute. Immediately who will execute? Constructor will execute. So you need not to call constructor separately. Once we create object to the class, then constructor will automatically execute. But look at this, we can create any number of objects to the class. We can create any number of objects to the class. Yes, we can create any number of objects to the class. Any number of objects to the class we can create, sir, no problem. But for every object, constructor will execute once. For every object, constructor will execute once. Constructor will execute once. For every object, constructor will execute once. Okay, this is for every object, constructor will execute once. Means 10 objects if we create to the class, each and every object purpose, constructor will initialize, constructor will execute. So these are very, very important points related to constructor and self also at the same time. Okay. So constructor is a special method of class, and constructor is used to initialize the values to the variables. That means if you want to assign the values to the variables, you can use constructor, and constructor name is always underscore underscore init. Init means initialization, and self is the first parameter of the constructor, and self is a special variable in Python object oriented programming. Self is not a keyword. Okay, strictly remember, you can check in keyword list, there is no self keyword. So don't call it as keyword. Self is the first parameter of the constructor. It is used to access current class members. Self can be used only within the class, not outside of the class. Constructor will execute automatically when we create object to the class. And we can create any number of objects to the class, but for every object, constructor will execute once. This is constructor. And what is method? Yes, point number one. Method is a reusable piece of code. Method is a reusable piece of code. What is method? Method is a reusable piece of code which can be called again and again whenever it is required. Method is a reusable piece of code which can be called again and again, again and again when it is required. When it is required. So once we create a method with our logic, and that method we can able to call again and again in which places are required. So directly we can able to use the code. So method reusability is possible, no? Yeah. So next, as I said, that constructor is used to initialize the values to the variables generally. Sir, why methods? Method is used to write any business logic code. Method can be used to write any business logic code. Write any business logic code. We can write any business logic code inside the method. Okay. But as I said, that constructor name is always init. But method name can be of any name. Just comparing method name, method name can be of any name. Method name can be of any name. Any name of the method you can take. But while giving the name of the method, you must and should uh, focus rules and regulations of names. Method name cannot be two parts. Method name cannot starts with a digit. Okay, like that. Naming rules are there in Python. Already we discussed. Method name can be of any name. So any valid name we can take method name. Okay. And self is the first parameter of the method also. Yes, self is the first parameter of the method. First parameter of the method, sir. Self is the first parameter of the method. Yes, self is there no in the constructor. Same here. What we have self here in the constructor, same method also inside also self is required, sir. By default it is self is used to access current class members I said, no, inside the method also. Method name can be of any name. Self is the first parameter of the method. Okay. Yes, but method constructor will execute automatically when we create object to the class I said, but method is not like that. Method will execute only when we call it. When we call it, then method will execute. Otherwise, it will not execute. Method will execute only when we call it. Whenever we call the method, then method will execute clearly. Okay, this is the case. Method will execute only when we call it. Method will execute only when we call it. If you don't call, method will not execute. But constructor is not like that. The moment when we create object to the class, then automatically constructor will execute. Okay, yes, that is the case. Next, as I said that we can create any number of objects to the class. Okay, here also same point. We can create any number of objects to the class, but for every object, for every object, for every object, we can call, we can call, we can call a method with any number of times, any number of times. Meaning is what? For every object, constructor will execute once. But for every object, we can call a method. On the same method for one object, we can call with any number of times I'm saying. So one object, same method, we can call multiple times also possible. So this is the exactly difference between constructor as well as method. Okay, this is exactly difference between constructor as well as methods are clearly. So based on this, we have to deal with. So constructor and method, clear differences. Let's see this. Let's go to program. In this program, I have included constructor and I have included method. Constructor will be execute automatically as soon as when we create object to the class, but method will execute only when we call. Yes, I'm calling the method. How I'm calling this method? By creating object of this class, because this method is under comes into this class only. So that's the reason I'm using this object to display emp details I'm taking. Sir, can we call one more time same method? Now you can see we can create any number of objects to the class. Is equal to employee is an object. Okay, for example, E1 I can take. E1 means employee one object. Okay, for example, next let's go to E2 employee. Next object I'm creating. Next object, second object, E2 equal to employee. So I'm calling the method E2 dot display emp details. So how many objects right now in my program? Two objects. What are that? E1 and E2 are two objects are there. E1 and E2, sir. So E1, E1, E2 are objects. E1 dot display emp details method I'm calling. E2 dot display emp details method I'm calling. But as I said that just now, for every object, constructor will execute once. So here E1 object purpose constructor will initialize these values, and E2 object also constructor will initialize the values. The moment when I execute this program, look at this, you will get two times we are calling display. Hello, hey Mr. Sanjay, please mute your audio. Hey, what is there, man?
This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, see here two objects are there, E1 and E2. So E1, E2 is two objects, and two objects purpose constructor will be initialized for every object separately, and after that E1 through we are calling this method, E2 through also we are calling this method. Now you can see we got two times same output here. Employee ID 1234, name Sai, Hyderabad 45. This is one object reference, and next object also we are having same details, sir. Sir, can I go for different details for every object reference? Yes, possible. How it is possible means we have to go for constructor with parameterized. Constructor with parameters. Means right now constructor is there but we don't have any parameters. But right now constructor with parameters I am going. So just here there is no parameterized constructor. Only normal values we are supplying like 1234, this name and HYD like this. But the moment when we create object one, same constructor will be initialize the values. Then when we go for object two, again same constructor is initializing the values. Okay. But sir, how I can go for constructor with parameters? Let's go with constructor with parameters. Because in this example, two objects are there. For every object, constructor will be initialized. Same values only initialized. Different values I want to do that. In that context, we can go for constructor with parameters. Like parameters means here you can see you can take any parameter names, same names also you can take, or different names also you can take, not a problem. Okay, so now I'm taking same names not. So employee ID purpose I'm taking ID parameter. Employee name purpose I'm taking name. Okay, address purpose ADDR parameter, just age purpose AG I'm taking. These are the parameters of my data fields. Now I'm assigning parameters ID here, and this is what actually name, and this is ADDR is parameter name, and AG means what actually this is. So these are parameters. Okay, method with parameters, what we discuss in core Python, function with parameters, same here also, method with parameters. This method is having parameters. Parameters are input values to the function. So now we can see ID, name, address, age, these are parameters. So these parameters values only I am assigning to left side variables. This is actual variables. These are parameter variables. These we can call it as formal arguments. These we can call it as actual arguments. Formal arguments means the argument which will accept the values from the user. But look at this. When this portion will execute, sir, when we create object to the class, right? As I said that we can create, we can't, why can't we do variables initialization inside method? Yes, we can do it. Inside the method also we can do it, not a problem. But method, why I'm not initializing means, see method, I need to go for all initialization part common for my all objects only. In that context, we can use constructor. Method means every object we have to call separately. Okay, the moment when the objects are coming to class, then immediately that common initialization I should effect onto the objects only. That's what I'm taking initialization. I will show that differences constructor when we use method, when we use like that. Okay, we can do it method also. Inside the method also we can print it. No, inside this constructor also we can print it. Why we need to take again this method for printing this? Inside the constructor also, why don't we can print? There are some rules are there, I'll tell you.
I have a question. Can we define these variables? The variable that is EID, ename, right? Can we define it just above above of the init function? Means it would be the part of only class. It's not the part of the any method or the constructor. Can we do that?
These are the parameters, parameter names and parameters. Any name you can take parameter name, and this names can be same or different also we can take like this.
Okay.
You're asking private variables only within the constructor. No, private variables we can define, that is different issue, but within the class we can define starting with underscore underscore like that. That is under comes in encapsulation. I'll explain you. So this portion is completely class portion. So right now what is my point is here, when I execute this two objects reference, same data we are getting previously. Now this time you can see constructor is having parameters EID, ename, eAddress, eAge. So this EID, ename, eAddress, eAge are the parameters. I'm saying that parameter names and actual variable names need not to be same, I'm saying. But look at this, when we create object to the class, automatically constructor will execute. Constructor is a special method. This method is having parameters. Once your method is having parameter means we need to supply input values to the parameters or not? Correct. So we have to supply parameters here only. The moment when we create object to the class, look at this, E1 equals to employee. Immediately when I open bracket, it is expecting some parameters here, EID, ename, eAddress, eAge. We have to supply here 1, 2, 3, EID, employee name, employee address, employee age. Again,
I have one more question. Just one more question. See here, the constructor part simply is initializing the object, right? It's creating the object, right? And with the help of the object, we can able to access that display underscore emt underscore detail method, right?
details method,
And
yeah.
yeah, and see, we can see that the self is a special variable which is present in init as well as in detail method, right?
Hmm.
Then with the help of the self method, it's able to access the property of the object, right?
Hmm.
Am I right?
Yes, yes, obviously, because self through only we are
Yeah, yeah.
accessing, no, this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay,
So
thank you.
self will
Got
work
it.
only within the class body.
Okay.
Yeah. Now when we go for object 2, so again it is expecting parameters. Now we can pass different parameters like different name. Now you can see here I'm taking address is different. Now this time we got different employee details like this. So why? Because object 1 reference through, I'm passing the values, input values to the constructor directly. When we call, when we create object 1 even, then this values will go and stored within its parameters 1, 2, 3, Sai, address HYD, age 34, This 123 will assign to here. This Sai will be assigned to here. HYD will be assigned to here. EH will be assigned to here, 34 like this. Next, whenever we create object 2 here, employee class, 345 will go to here. Constructor will through execute. Raj will go to here. SR Nagar will go to here. 45 will go to here. This will assign. So every object constructor will execute. We are supplying the values. That values only we are getting this result.
I have a question.
Tell me.
Uh, can you please go on the top of the page? Can you go above? Uh,
Hmm.
so here, why we are not assigning here? I see that employee ID we have not written here at the value
Where?
EID and then the employee name, employee address.
Line
So
number,
this
tell
is
me.
the method that we have to follow, or
Line number, please. Line number, please, so that I
line
can
number
easily recognize.
4, 5, 6.
Line number 4, 5, 6 is the initialization part. 3, 4, 5, 6.
So in this initialization part, this is like a method. We don't have to, give supply the value here.
So we are supplying the values, no? Here we are supplying the values at the time of creating object only.
Okay.
See, this is constructor. What is this? Constructor only. Init is the constructor I said, no, just now.
Yeah.
It's a constructor is a special method of class. When it will execute constructor,
When the
when
object
we
is
create
created.
when object is created. So I'm creating object. E1 is object. Immediately constructor will execute. So whenever constructor will execute, it is expecting some input value, parameter value. This values I'm supplying here. This values I'm supplying here. It will go to here, and one by one will store here. 1, 2, 3, name, address, age. This values only right hand side. Whatever the values are there, it will assign to the left hand side. After assignment, EID is holding that 1, 2, 3. E name is having Sai. E address is HYD. 34 is the value. This is initialization part will take place.
Okay, so can I compare this with the Excel sheet data, like the class employee? So can
Hmm.
I compare this with the table name and then the object as a column name? Just asking.
No,
Can I
no
compare with
object.
that? Because it's similar to, the structure is a little bit similar here.
No,
Um,
object is not a column. So you can compare column EID, E name, E address, E age are the columns.
okay.
Hmm.
Because in the object it's more like a detail, and in the class it's like a the whole class, like a whole object name. I don't know if I say it properly or not. I was not able
Even
to
see,
mhm.
so this is class body totally. Whatever I am selecting, the selected area is total class body. Inside the class body, I'm including constructor, I'm including method. So constructor will execute automatically as soon as when we create object, because in the last session I said if you want to represent a class, object is required. E1, E2, any number of objects we can require. So that object through only we can access class members here. So the moment when we create object, constructor will execute automatically. Constructor is a special method. It's having parameters. Usually when method is having constructor is having parameters, we have to supply input values to the parameters according to method rule. We are supplying that input parameters also, 1, 2, 3, this one. It will come to here and it will initialize that values.
So whenever the classes, I don't know what you say, whenever the class is defined, so you need to provide the parameter and the method, and then we need to use the initialization, right?
Yeah, whenever we define the class, we need to initialization by using constructor only. But
Okay.
constructor is optional. Without constructor also we can initialize. That I'll show you, no problem. But we
Okay.
are in the first program only. So first I try to understand the constructor, how it will work, and method, how it will work, and I'll show more examples. Without constructor, how we can do, with constructor, how we can do, everything we'll discuss, no problem.
Okay, thank
So
you.
right now,
Mhm.
previously we have given hard code values like 123, name, address, age, like this. But the moment when we give hard code values here, for every object, same constructor will be initialized, same values are going to represent. That's what I'm doing. What right now I'm not giving hard code values here. So just a moment. I'm not giving hard code values. I'm passing values to constructor at the time of creating object only. That's what we got the output here differently for object 1 and object 2. Here object
Okay,
1 values are different, object 2 values are different now. Different employee details we are printing.
okay,
Yeah. So we can create any number of objects to the class. We can get the different student details like this.
okay,
Please mute your audio. Yeah. Now, so here this is parameterized constructor. In this parameterized constructor, we have a lot of parameters, input values. But look at this parameter and this real data fields or variables not required to be same. Even you can include what any type of parameters also. X, Y, Z, like this. Okay. A like this. X, Y, Z, A. These are the parameters. So X value, I'm accepting ID. Y value, I'm accepting name. Parameter. Z value is accepting address. A value, I'm accepting age only. So parameters can be of any name. It should not be same. It cannot be name. It is not required to same as what your data fields, what your actual variables. Any parameters you can take, it will work fine, sir. Not a problem. Let's run this. We got the output same. Parameters can be of any name, but just that will accept the values from the calling place only, sir. So same output we got or not? Yes. But look at this. Self is the first parameter. Sir, what happen if I don't take self here? So if I remove the self, now observe carefully. One of your first parameter is act as what? Self. Strictly remember all of you. One of your first parameter is act as a self only. Now you can see X became a self. So the name SELF is not compulsory. You can take any name also, but better to take self only to avoid confusion. So once the moment when I try to do init method, so X, Y, Z, A are there is no self. But according to my discussion, I said that self is the special variable in Python object-oriented programming. Self is the first parameter of the constructor. So self is the first parameter, but if I don't mention any self in the first parameter, one of your automatically here four parameters are there what we supplied here. One of your first parameter is act as a self by default. Now we can see X is acting as a self. I need to take X dot EAD, X dot ename, X dot EAddress, okay, X dot EAge, like that we can use. So we are missing last variable EAge parameter. So that's what I'm taking. So first parameter I'll take EAD means ID I'm taking. So this is parameter ID. It will work fine now, sir. So this will also work fine. Why? Because is there any self? No self. But who is acting as a self here? You are one of the first parameter, that is X only. So got my point? The name SELF is not compulsory, but better to maintain self name only because that is the standard name only. So don't change unnecessarily. I'm saying just an example. If you don't use first parameter as a self, by default, one of your first parameter by default act as what? Self only I'm saying. Okay. So look at this. I'm not giving here this X value. I'm giving only self. That is good practice. Self and X, Y, G, A. So here we can use self only here, sir. Self dot EAD, self dot ename, self dot e-address self dot age like this. So now here employee ID X parameter, fine. This is correct. Just an example I'm showing. So this is the constructor and self is the first parameter. If you don't take self, and what is the default? By default, first parameter is act as what? Self only clearly. So this is constructor with the method and difference between constructor and method and like this. And most important thing I'm telling you, including constructor is optional, not compulsory. Including method is optional, not compulsory. Without method we can handle, without constructor we can handle, but anyone is compulsory. Either constructor or method, anyone is compulsory. Suppose you may get doubt, sir, here two objects are there, E1 and E2. Two objects display method we are calling. So why don't we take this total thing, display details also inside the constructor? Inside the constructor also we can display, no? Why unnecessarily we need to take this method and all? So let's comment this method. And at the time of method is not there, no need to call the method also, comment it. Right now, right now we don't have any method. Only two objects are there. Constructor is there. For every object, constructor will execute once I said. Okay. The moment when constructor execution, initialization will takes place. After initialization, immediately it is printing, no? Yes, fine. But look at this. When we go for execution, we will get output, no problem. Two objects are there. Two objects purpose. We got the output here. Employee ID, employee name, address, age. Employee ID, employee name, address, age, like this. We got these two object references. Fine. Okay. But all of a sudden I'm taking decision like I don't want to display employee two details. Will you stop here to avoid employee two details display? No, it's not possible. My requirement is what? I am creating two objects. Yes, I should create two objects of this employee class, but I don't want to display this employee two details. I'm asking, will you say to the constructor, please stop to print employee two details? No, you can't. Because the moment when we create objects, automatically who will execute? Constructor will execute. So constructor execution begins. It will take initialization. Immediately this portion is also part of constructor only. So automatically will execute two objects references. So we got this two object references clearly. But we can't stop one of the student details. If you don't want to print, we can't stop them. So there is no flexibility here. That's what always better to use print details into a separate method. So when we keep these print details into separate method, so what is the flexibility? You can just here we have two objects. Two times I'm calling display emp underscore details method. So two times we got the details clearly. Okay, but if you don't want to display employee two details, simply you can avoid the calling of employee two details here. So now this time method will execute only for which object you are calling, that object only will be initialized, and second object will not be called. So only one student details we got here. Second student details we are not getting. So using method in this print function, print statement through, we have lot of flexibility because inside the method body, whenever it is required, you can execute it, and whenever it is not required, you just simply ignore the calling of that method. So this is the purpose of method creation. Okay, so why don't we keep this total print statements also inside the constructor means? So the reason is when we create object to the class, immediately constructor will execute. The moment when constructor execute, automatically all objects references will be work. So that will be not good. Sometimes I don't want to print employee two details. Then how I can avoid means just avoid calling these methods clearly here. Okay. Yes. Now this time it's okay. Next, I'm saying that only constructor also enough. So let's copy this program totally. I'll shift into other program so that it will clarity. Object oriented program 3 I'm taking. Object oriented program 3. Now we can see class employee. So def underscore underscore init x, y, z, a is there. These are the parameters. Okay. But I don't have any method here right now. Let's remove the method. No methods. But look at this. Okay. Only what is there in this program? Constructor is there. So as per our discussion, E1, E2 are two objects. When we create two objects, then automatically constructor will execute. Constructor is initializing the values by taking its parameter values. But we don't have any printing details. Look at this. Do you have any print details? No. So how I can get this constructor data here? So if you don't have any method to display the details, so you can see this print e1 dot underscore underscore dictionary also we can use. Dictionary also a special method in Python object oriented programming. E1 is a object reference. The moment when we create object 1, it will go for constructor. Constructor will take the parameters values from here. It will initialize the values. E1 is having some object reference values. These values can be held into E1. That E1 data I'm printing into dictionary format because we don't have any method separately. E2 also I'm printing separately here dictionary format. Now once I execute this, we can get dictionary format values. Employee ID 123, employee name, employee address, employee age. Again second object employee ID 345, employee name, employee address, employee age, like this only. We got the details or not? Yes, we got details clearly. Look at this. So do I have any method here? No. So that what I mean to say, including method is optional. If we don't have any method also, still we can able to print object reference data like E1 and E2 can have the reference of the class, no, employee class. So that data we are printing into dictionary format. So as I said that including method is optional in object oriented programming. Fine. Here there is no method. If there is no method, how to print our object reference data means using dictionary through. Got my point? Yes. Next, including constructor is also optional, no? Yes, same program. Let's go for another program. Object oriented programming 4. These are all the variations. You can see this. Now including constructor is optional. This constructor I am not using here. Right now we have only what actually display emp details are there. But how I can accept the values means I can create one more method, get underscore emp underscore details. It's my method, different method again. You can create any number of method inside the class. Right now in this method I'm accepting values at runtime. So self dot employee id equals to int of input of enter employee id. Just I'm asking at runtime enter employee id. Okay, then self dot employee name e dot name equals to input of enter employee name. Enter employee name. Just I'm accessing. Next here self dot e dot underscore what actually address equals to input of enter employee address. Enter employee address like this. Self dot employee underscore age equals to int of input of enter employee age like this. This is the case. Okay, so class employee get underscore emp underscore details, display underscore emp underscore details. So EID, ename, eAddress, EAge. So these are the get employee details is a method. Using this method through I am accepting input values from the user. So now you need not to pass any values here because we don't have any constructor, any parameters. Okay, we can create any number of objects, it's not a matter. But let's see this here. E1 is object. So this is method, this is method. Both are methods only there in my program. Is there any constructor, sir? No constructor is available. Strictly remember. So only one methods also required. So even dot get emp details method I'm calling. Even dot display emp details method I'm calling. So this program you can observe here, only class is there, only methods are there here. And first program constructor is there, method is there. Second program only constructor is there. Third program no constructor, only methods are there. Methods through I am handling this. So let's run this one object oriented programming 4. So we got the method execution. We are calling method get emp details, employee ID 1234, employee name, employee address, employee age. So this is what input details of the method. Once I execute this, something went wrong, sir. E-address is something mistake I have given. So let's try to do this one. So now you can see E-address 3 D's are there here, 2 D's are there here. That is the mistake. Let's rerun. Employee ID, employee name, employee address, employee age is like this. So employee ID 1234, employee name is Sai, employee address is HYD, employee age is 35. These are the details are available. Okay, so look at this, these details. So did I use any constructors are in this program? No, only methods. Okay, so first program is look like this program is having constructor and method. This program is having only constructor, no methods. But if I don't have any methods, how I can display this constructor object reference details means using dictionary. Instead of methods, we are using dictionary to print the employee details. Next, this program is having what? No constructor, only methods are there here. Now you can see two are methods only. Get underscore emp details, display underscore emp underscore details. So you can have methods. Method we can call any number of times for any object. Same object also we can call different times methods. No problem at all. So this is complete overall object-oriented programming, class creation, constructor creation, method creation, constructor and method difference is what? Okay. So total. Anyways, we can able to handle it clearly. But generally, go ahead.
Yeah, do we have a default constructor concept here in Python?
Default constructor, there is no default is nothing but this is only here, init only. If I don't have init and default constructor, this is only default constructor. This will act as a constructor only here.
Okay, if we are not giving init explicitly, then internally it will implicitly it will provide it, right?
Implicitly, it will provide it. You can see this, just a
Yeah.
moment. Object-oriented programming 5, we have class. Now you can see, now there is no constructor available, but we are creating object here. Right now, there is no data is available in this. As I'm taking, no constructor. Let's try with this. What is there in dictionary? You can see this, so that you will get. There is no constructor. Even dot underscore underscore dictionary I'm taking and print even dot e2 dot underscore underscore dictionary here. So we don't have any constructor here right now in object oriented programming 5, but we're trying to run this now. So now we can see we got this even e2 empty dictionary is there. That means constructor is there,
Right.
but there is no values are there.
Okay.
So it's a default
Okay.
constructor.
And
It will act.
yeah, and it's a
Even you
BMC.
can
It's a
see
default.
if I try to initialization. So initialization also I'm taking here. I'm not giving here pass. So let's run this again. Now this time also same or not. So that means default constructor is this is only. Even if you provide the values, it will take the values. If not provide, then default values all empty dictionary here.
Okay. And as we can say, means if it's a construct, it's also storing data as a dictionary, right?
Obviously, constructor can initialize the data, but
Mm,
constructor data will stored in the object reference only. Even it holding the data, constructor data, because the moment when we create object, automatically who will execute? Constructor only. Constructor portion is what? It will initialize.
Right.
The
That part is clear, but my question is that in C means once here we are printing that constructor, it's a empty constructor. Then in this scenario, it's a yeah, it's a printing like a dictionary. So that's why I told you, it's storing data like a dictionary format, right?
No, no, no. It will store the data in dictionary format, but the thing is, we
Yeah,
are
yeah.
printing dictionary. No, here DICT is there. So
Oh,
the way you are
okay,
printing,
okay,
it's semantic.
okay, okay.
Normally, you
Got
can
it.
see this. I'm not having dictionary. I'm printing E1 and E2. This is object reference. It's a object reference now. This employee object at this one, employee object at this one, like this.
Yeah, right.
so if there is no
Yeah.
constructor, then it will create only one object.
No, no, no. There is no constructor. Then for every object, default constructor will initialize. Default means it will internally it will call the default
Okay.
constructor. That is also init only. See, for any parameters you can pass, man, Mr. Das. So if you pass formal parameters to the method of initializing insert of user input, then how we can supply the values either object or method? Method calling through only. See, you are calling the method. In the previous example, you can see we are having method. We are passing the values here. We are inputting the values. We can pass that these values into EID, ename, eAddress. Here also we can include, no problem.
So you said if there is no constructor, if the constructor is empty, it will apply the by default one.
Yes, default one only. Default one means I'm saying this is only init only internally.
Okay.
So we don't have constructor. Just observe here, there is no data in employee class. But look at this default constructor only initialization, object purpose, and default object reference only is available. Print even if you pass dictionary also, it's an empty dictionary. There is no constructor initialization values. That's what it's a default values, empty constructor. For one thing is for sure, each and every object constructor will execute once. The moment when we create object, constructor will be initialized. This is constructor name, man. This is a constructor. But actually, this can go and looking forward for init method. Init is a special method. That is, we can say constructor here. In other programming language, how constructor name should be same as class name. But in Python, constructor can be override with init only by default. Initialization tool. That's where we can say init is a constructor only, initialization. Method names are any names, no problem. You can use any method names, not display as method names. Anything, you can use it. So even you can see M1 method I'm using. Look at this, how I'm using. M2 method I'm using. It's my method. So what? We can call M1 method. We can call M2 method. But is this meaningful, do you think? What is M1, M2? Method names only, but it will work fine, but it's not meaningful, no? So if you give this meaningful names, that will be clear, understandable point of view, any user. Now let's give this again. M2 method is there. M2 method is there. Employee ID 123, employee name, sorry, employee address, HYD, employee age is 34. We got these details. So method name can be of any name. But if I give M1, M2, how they can understand? So that's what I'm giving what? Proper method names. Get emp details means we have to get the values from the employee details. Display emp details means we are displaying the employee details. So it's a meaningful name. Okay. So that's all for now today. So